Hi, this is Romilly with Golden Circle Designs with another stitch to learn. If you're enjoying these, I highly recommend that you subscribe to my channel or subscribe to my blog, and the blog link is below, along with some other links that might help you, including links to my Etsy shop where I have designs and cross-stitch patterns and some original art for sale. This is going to be Colonial Knots, and like all other knots, it's much easier if you can use two hands. So if you have a floor stand or a table frame to hold your work, that's a great thing. If not, you can take your hoop and you can prop it on between a table and your stomach while you're working on it, so that you can keep your hands on top and work on both it that way. Colonial knots are easier to keep the tension on than a French knot, and yet they have a very similar appearance. I'm going to work in between the two looped stitches that we've done the last couple weeks, because I left a space open to fill in, and I'm going to fill it in. So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull my needle up, and I've already started it with an away waist knot. This is where a French knot would just wrap around here. The Colonial knot makes a figure 8, and it's actually relatively easy to do. If you slide if you're holding your thread this way, slide it under your thread, slide your needle under your thread so that it's like that, and then wrap the thread over the top of it. And that puts a figure 8 on your needle, and then just next to where you came up, you push it back down. Again, we're using the left hand, the non-dominant hand, to hold the tension while you pull the thread through. And see how that's very similar to a French knot. Now, with the Colonial knot, the only way you can change the size of a Colonial knot is by changing the thickness of your thread. So to make it thicker, you'd add more strands or use a thicker thread. To make it thinner, you use a thinner thread or take strands away if you're using floss. So scoop under, wrap around, and then down. So we're going to come up, and we're going to scoop under, wrap around, and go down. And that's your Colonial knot. Play around with it. You see that they're a lot more even in size. And they're very easy to keep even in size. It's very hard to lose the tension on these. Even if you loosen it, here, let's see. Even if I loosen, let's redo that, so that I loosen the tension on this and don't pull it tight, it still makes a pretty nice knot, and it's still pretty close to the others. So to tight. They're also less likely to pull through. I'm not sure why on that. It's very similar to a French knot, and I would expect it to pull through as easily, but it doesn't. So let's sign off here, and I will switch over to the other side, and we'll work on learning it with the left hand. Okay, here we are back with the left hand of the French knot, of the Colonial knot, which is, again, similar to the French knot, but a little bit easier to handle. It's easier to make the tension straight on, to keep the tension. We're going to work with our left hand. So our left hand is dominant, and our right hand is what's going to control the tension and wrap the thread. To start, you've pulled your thread up from the back of the fabric, and you're going to scoop under, scooping it under there so that you make a C and stick it through, and then it just wraps around the top of the needle and goes back down in the same hole, next to the same hole it came up in. I would not put it in the same hole. I would put it next to it, because while it doesn't pull through as much as a French knot does, you still can pull the knot through the fabric. So here it is up. We're going to scoop, wrap, and down, tugging the tension so that it's relatively taut. And this makes a little figure 8. The knot looks slightly different than a French knot. The hole is in a slightly different place, but most people you won't be able to tell the difference. So if we're going to do a French knot, a colonial knot here, that's with the tension held tightly. If I do a colonial knot by under, wrap, and I don't pull the tension as tight as I did on the others, I leave it relatively loose, it's harder to get that loop, which of course today I did. But it's a lot easier for a colonial knot to keep your stitches even than it is with a French knot. Like any knots, though they're a bear to pull out if you need to, you'll need to trim them and rip the entire line of them out. So that's a looser one, but the knot still, when it's tugged, still looks pretty good. So I'm going to, my left hand, tuck. I usually use my index finger to hold that while I wrap this around. Down, tighten the tension, and hold the tension tight while you pull it through. And there's your colonial knots. Enjoy playing with it, and you can do the same things with them as you can with your French knots, and we will see you next week. Thank you.